Welcome to Bitter Reality Brewing. Today we got something super simple, super easy, not a big deal. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Thanks again for all the sharing, it's been huge. I bought this at Whole Foods, it's a Honey Crisp blend. Sadly, I almost got a Honey Crisp pure apple cider, but when I went back to the store, it was sold out at a different store. This, they put it on sale. I grabbed 2 half gallons, and if you've had a Honey Crisp apple, freaking awesome. And I'm just gonna make a super simple, super easy cider to show you just how easy it is to make a cider. There's lots of videos out there. I'm doing it because I'm enjoying it, I'm having fun, and figured I would share. And what's on tap hasn't changed much. I did an original gravity reading to see if I wanted to add some corn sugar to this to kind of bump the ABV up. This is at 1.050. If you're just trying to brew, or make a cider, not brew, sorry. If you're trying to make a cider, don't worry about gravity and everything unless you're into home brewing and you have the equipment, then great, you can. But this helps me to estimate what the ABV might be. At 1.050, it tells me that if I hit 1.000 for my final gravity, which is very common for cider, sometimes even lower, I should be around 6.6%. That's plenty. I don't need any additional ABV on that. So all we're gonna do is pour the cider, and I say cider because it's a apple cider, it's just not a hard cider. We're gonna just pour it in here. I already opened it because, like I said, I was measuring. Actually, you know what? That's what we'll do. We'll use the first half gallon I haven't opened. Biggest thing is to make sure everything's clean. If you have things like PBWs, Star Sand, things like that, use them. Get everything super clean. Feel free to dump it in like I am. It's gonna aerate it. But the biggest concern you have is contamination. So you want everything to be as clean as you can. Don't drip apple cider all over yourself. Okay, before I do this isn't required. Peptic enzyme. You don't need to add this. It's gonna help break down some of that cloudiness and clear it up for me. That's why I'm using it. You don't need to use it, but if you have it, go for it. I'm gonna add it now. I only need a half a teaspoon. And the reason I said I was gonna do it before I pour it all in here is because it's gonna stick to my funnel. And I want to blend it up. Plus yeast nutrient. This you kind of need. You don't have to have it, but it will help things because sadly, apple cider doesn't have all the nutrients that the yeast may need. So this is definitely a recommended thing. If you don't have a yeast nutrient, you could take something like baker's yeast or any kind of yeast you want, and I want to say, you have to look it up, but I want to say it's about 140 Fahrenheit for about 10-20 minutes. You just want to kill it, make sure it's all dead before you put in it. And what it is the apple cider yeast, or cider yeast I'm going to use, is going to use the nutrients from that dead yeast. So that's a little trick that you can throw in there. Okay, now that we have everything and the funnel's all good powdery stuff on it, we'll rinse it all down in there and help blend it up a little bit. Okay, do not put a full gallon in here, otherwise you're not going to have any head space, so go right. That's good. Probably didn't give myself enough, but if I have a mess, I have a mess. Just trying to let it drip, should we say? Okay, yes, I still have this, but I'll drink that. Actually. That's very good. Okay, next thing, your yeast. I have Mangrove Jack's cider yeast, M02, and I have Saf cider from fermented. This is about 5 grams, this is about 9.6. I'm gonna save this for a 5-gallon batch. We're just gonna go ahead and use about a quarter of this. Only need about a fifth, but I figure I'd be on the safe side. Better to overpitch a little than underpitch. And from reading about both of these cider yeast too, I cannot find any difference. So I'm not sure why I got 2 different kinds. And you might need a pair of scissors, or for me, I'm gonna use a razor blade. Yes, I should have sprayed that, I'm not too worried. Hands have already gotten enough Star Sand on them. There we go. Ooh, Okay, I used almost half the pack, but that's okay. Nah, more like a third. Your hands should be clean. Mine should be pretty clean, but spray a little more Star San on there just to make sure. Shake it up. The yeast will tell you to put it in water around 72 degrees and let it sit for a little bit so it can kind of break apart and get going before you pitch it. But honestly, even though this is ice cold, I threw it in there. It'll start to warm up. The yeast will eventually take off. It may take a little longer to kick. I'm fine with that. So I'm simply going to put this in the fermentation. Fermentation temperature recommendation, I believe, was between 68 and 74 Fahrenheit. That's Fahrenheit. You can convert to Celsius, sorry. The yeast actually can go in the low 60s all the way up to about 85, but you could get some off flavors. The warmer the temp, the faster it's going to ferment, but you're also going to have, like I said, that chance of off flavors. I'm going for nice and clean, so I'm going to drop it in around 70, 72, because that's what I have some beer that's fermenting at right now. But that's it. Once it's done fermenting, we'll continue and see how it tastes. Okay, it's time to move the Honeycrisp Blend Cider. So I'll take my t-shirt off of it. Yes, I put a t-shirt over it. Looks very clear, looks beautiful. So you can see almost all the way through it. I'm gonna put this on here. I've already purged the CO2. I may have purged a little too much there. Oh, there it goes. That thing keeps getting stuck, so I gotta be careful. Either need to fix it or replace it, but we'll figure it out. Okay, I've already transferred here. I got a little air sitting in here for some reason, and I also learned why I use big pots instead of little pots. These things fall out and it's a total pain in the neck. So here we go. There we go. We'll move our Star San over here. My little pad from something else over there. Set this on the plate because it needs to be cleaned, and then we'll do our transfers. So take it over here. And no, we're not transferring it to that old dirty keg. I'm just gonna get it started. It's gonna be hard to tell though between water and cider because this stuff is pretty clear. There we go. I'm gonna say that's cider. It looks like cider. Tiny, tiny hint of yellow. Okay, here we go. This should be relatively quick since it's only 1 gallon. I did put a little bit, like just under a 1/4 teaspoon of gelatin in there, just in case we pick up any of this yeast, we can kind of get it out. Or should we say, make it fall out of suspension. I'm not done. Go over here and we'll pull some water. Okay, I probably got a little bit of cider, about half of that tube. That's okay, I don't want any of that water. Yeah, I definitely have some cider, I can see it, but that's okay. I'd rather have pure cider than no water. Minus whatever was already in it. I'm gonna dry this off a little. And that's it. Spray down a little Star San. Okay, you saw us put the cider in the 1 gallon, chill it down. It's been sitting there for 2 days. I know you may have seen this. I know there's a couple companies out there making this right here, quick carb system. And they use a pump identical to this, but it's not a transfer pump. I'm gonna try to use my transfer pump. The transfer pump has screw-ons and it's hard plastic instead of being a longer piece that I can actually use one of these nice little clamps on. So it might not work, it might explode, I don't know. I gotta double check the total PSI we need, but I'm gonna crank it up to 15 PSI right now, and I'm gonna start the pump and just start, all I'm doing is I'm pulling the liquid out of here, through the pump, through here, back through the air side. And in here, I have a carb stone, or a stone like you'd use for oxygenating or CO2. And we're gonna put CO2. I'm just gonna connect it to this little bad boy. Go like that. And it's already gonna start carbonating, or at least pumping CO2. And see the liquid, because it's pushing the air this way. So I'm gonna turn it on and see what happens. It's either gonna be great or it's going to be really, really bad. This is 100% do it yourself, so we'll do it ourselves and figure it out. Okay, so I changed these, tightened them down, took these things off, and we'll see how that goes. Let's try it now. There it goes. Very foamy on this side. It's clear beer over here, a little bit of foam. And it's going to keep going until this side's not foaming anymore. Okay, I'm not saying it's perfect, but you ever seen a head like that on cider? I've never seen a head like that on cider. I didn't know you could have a head on cider, but definitely got to work out a few kinks. Definitely had some leaking issues, took care of those. These nice little Teflon like washers that work really well. I had to swap that one out for some reason. The air one was leaking. Put the stainless on there, it worked great. Had to hold this up because it was creating too much pressure when it was down. But for $20, I mean, that's what it runs. I already had the pump. I already had this. I already had everything else. All I needed was the pump. So for 20 bucks, I'm excited. And the head's starting to go down. Slightly overcarbed, but it's because it's all agitated. That'll come down a little bit. But so that I can instantly carbonate things and watch the little bubbles float, I'm good. Nice, cheap, quick carb. Awesome. Thank you again for joining Bitter Reality Brewing. And if you want it to taste super clean, super clear, I mean, the Honey Crisp is a little mild, but it's very dry, which is all I care about when it comes to cider. Is it's got to taste good and be dry. The Honey Crisp would have been nice, but Honey Crisp is, got a nice sweetness to it, and I may have fermented that part out. Yeah, that's really good. Don't forget, like, subscribe. Thank you again for all the sharing. It's been great. Appreciate it. Now I've got a mess to clean up.